greetings of welcome home today when I got to Chicago. It's a warm feeling. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, congratulations on the book. Excellent. For those of you who haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Obviously, anecdotes from your playing and coaching days, and also quite a few leadership techniques and team building examples. So it's a wonderful read. There's millions of places we could start this conversation, but I thought we'd start with the obvious. Dennis Rodman, U.S. diplomat, good or bad idea?
I'd say Senator Iran, you've been successful. They stopped Iran, sure.
I thought since it's a Chicago Tribune and Prince's Row, that we maybe start a little bit with the literary process before we get into coaching and leadership and things. This is your 7th book.
That's right.
Talk to me about what compels you to write a book. When do you know it's time? What do you like about the writing process? What don't you like about the writing process?
I guess being a reader is the reason why I've written books. Is that there's that personal feeling that you get from dialogue with a reader and with an author when you're participating in the book. And I think it's brought me closer to individuals that give them an inside look into some of the things that go on a very, very career that I've had, a very, very coaching career that I've had. I have a co-author, one that also co-authored the book, Sacred Coach. And I am opposed to ghost author, ghost writer that comes along to a lot of people that are in my position that do the basic storytelling, because I want it to be a team process, and it's part of what I am. And so Hugh Delahanty, who's been in Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, is the editor of all Parks Productions, lately Udney Reader, one time the editor. First read it to me in the early 90s, maybe even in the late 80s, and was writing an article for Troy Seppel Magazine, which is a Buddhist magazine, and we developed this connection. And we had this arduous process of putting forth Sacred Books. I'm sure there's some people here that have read that book. It's about 17 years old. And the process involved losing the publisher and having to reformat the book, and even Hughes' brother's a lawyer. It turned out to be publisher gave up on the book. In the meanwhile, Michael Jordan returned to the Bulls, and the story became relevant again very quickly. And I very picked up the book. And so we went through this process of writing a book, having this very big problems with it, having to reformat a book, and having tremendous success with this book, and then developing a relationship over the subsequent 15 years. So going through this was an easy process to get together with this author. However, it started in 2009 when he called me up and said, it's time to write another book. He won the championship, and there's a book about 5 rings that I think is a book by a Chinese author about consecutive amount of trials and error that a person goes through in lessons learned. And think about that in terms of the rings that you won coaching basketball. And so that's a concept of which 11 rings comes out of. I was hoping it was going to be 12, didn't make it 15, but 11 seemed appropriate. And then following my retirement, then we got busy on the book. Took a break when I had a knee replacement operation last year at the end of March, and then resumed last summer in going through and editing this book. And there's the finished product. And I think the most difficult thing was selecting pictures that are in the book. That's the hardest thing I had to do. There's some things we talk about in this book that are very personal, however. Casey's dying to ask a question. I would let him lead this next charge.
Well, before we get there, the Laker thing was probably the last chance for that if that didn't work out.
Well, I delivered that message to Mitch Kupchak just 3 weeks prior to the season starting. And 1 week into the season, the Lakers fired their coach, Mike Brown, who is presently the coach of Cleveland Cavaliers. And they went to Jean Buss and asked her if they could possibly coach me. And she's vice president in charge of business operations. And simply said, I don't want to be part of basketball operations, but I think they'll be willing to talk to you. And then came home and told me, please talk to my brother. So I listened to him, and it became an interesting dialogue. We spent an hour and a half together, and I said, I'll give you my information about how I feel about it on Monday. It was a Saturday afternoon. Sunday night, they hired a coach, which was Mike D'Antoni, and called me at midnight and said, sorry I had to deliver this message, but we decided to go with another coach, Mike D'Antoni. And I kind of said, yeah, and why? And he said, we thought he was the best coach for these guys that we have here. And so I just said, for Steve Nash, I understand entirely. But for those big guys that I have down in the middle part of the Saltway, Howard, maybe not. And of course, the guys that I coach, Kobe Bryant, Ron Artest, now a little bit of peace. I think they probably would enjoy, being part of what I coach, but that's your decision. And he said, "Well, I have to live with it." And so, in the process, Dr. Buss was in the hospital, and I know they had gone and delivered a message to him, and the idea that I didn't have to coach was a relief.